So here we're at the Emergency Operations Center, and this is where we coordinate the response to disasters as well as start that recovery planning going forward. This room is a centralized location where we bring in partner agencies and different organizations throughout the region. We'll have state partners here, we'll have federal partners here, we'll have the responding agencies here. We separate it out into different sections. In an operations section, we'll have fire personnel, we'll have medical examiner, we'll have animal services, law enforcement, medical branch. We'll have a care and shelter branch where they're coordinating the shelter components and the feeding components. We'll have a public works section where they're worried about the roads and keeping those open and moving things along. We'll have info and intel, where they're looking at what's the information coming in, what's the information coming out. We have logistics, and those folks are the ones that are going to be looking to get those resources mobilized to those agencies that are responding that are needing it. And we'll have planning, and those folks are very critical because they're looking ahead for us. We do different shifts here, usually 12-hour shifts, and that planning section, they're not concerned about the shift that they're in right now. They're writing a plan for the next shift that's coming in, so they understand what their objectives are and what their plan ahead is going to be for that next shift coming up. Another crucial part that we have here in Emergency Operations Center is the Joint Information Center. And the big goal about the Joint Information Center is many voices, but one message. So we'll have different representatives from the different responding agencies. So they'll have different representatives as well out in the field at an incident command or a unified command post. And they'll be talking with their public information officers that are located here in our Joint Information Center. And that way, if a different agency has a different piece of information than another agency, that can get deconflicted, we can get on the same page, and we're pushing a single message that is vetted and verified. So when we're looking at repopulating an area, there's a lot of different decisions that have to be made by a lot of different agencies that work together. Part of the Emergency Operations Center or Unified Command in the field is to have all those different heads of those agencies, those decision makers together to be able to collaborate on a decision to make sure that everyone is on the same page before we push a message out that an area is safe to repopulate. A fire agency that's responsible will sign off on a repopulation, the law enforcement agency will sign off on a repopulation, and also the County of San Diego Office of Emergency Services, the Director of Emergency Services. And once all the agencies that are responding in that area and have a stake in that repopulation have verified that the area is safe now to repopulate, that is when we will make the move towards a Joint Information Center to push out that information and disseminate it so folks will know that they can come home now. One large component before we can repopulate an area is to have lifelines established. Having an area where there's utility lines down and live wires, or there's not running water in that area, we need to address those before we repopulate. So having SDG&E out there, we know that they've done the work that they intended to do and the lines are safe and the area is accessible, as well as water. And if there isn't running water, maybe we need to think about a different way to get water to those folks in the community before we repopulate. So based on the specific disaster's size, severity, and location, and the damage impacts that did occur based on that disaster, that dictates what kind of assistance that we're able to bring in from state and federal agencies to those folks that were impacted by a disaster. Frankly, it takes a very large disaster to bring in FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency's resources for individuals and households. When they come in, they do bring grants for those that qualify. But to qualify for these grants, you usually have to have major impacts and be underinsured or not insured. In the interim, for those smaller incidents, the other option is the Small Business Administration, and they provide disaster loans. It's not a grant, it's something that has to be paid back. It is a low interest loan. But to get those, you also have to be underinsured or uninsured. And to get that, we still need at least about 25 homes with more than 40% or more of uninsured damages. So for those disasters that is less than 25 homes that have a lacking of insurance, then there aren't state or federal resources that come in for those. There aren't grants coming in from FEMA. So we lean heavily on volunteer organizations to meet that gap. So even if we have a very large incident and we get a presidentially declared disaster where you get FEMA's individual and households program brought in, the maximum grant, if you're in the worst case scenario, is about $36,000 and it's adjusted each year, so it'll likely go up. The average for the 2007 fires, including Witch Creek Fire, was about $3,800. So getting that maximum grant, it's very difficult to do. You have to be in a very bad spot at that point and be in a much larger situation to be able to get that maximum grant. With the U.S. Small Business Administration, the SBA, and their loans, they aren't just for businesses as it sounds with the SBA, the Small Business Administration. They're also for individuals and households. For households, we're looking at 25 or more homes with at least 40% or more uninsured damages based from this incident. They bring in loans, I believe they're about $200,000 at a low interest rate, around 3 or 4%. So here in our office, the Office of Emergency Services, we have a staff duty officer program. There's about 8 of us right now, and we work 7-day shifts. And with that shift, we have a different phone that's with us. So we're carrying usually our work phone, personal phone, and the staff duty officer phone. And on that phone is where you get a lot of different notifications on what's going on in the county. You'll get the computer-aided dispatch, the CAD messages from CAL FIRE. You'll get some from law enforcement based on an incident. And that's how we're notified if there's a fire somewhere. We can get something that says wildland fire at these coordinates, and you can click on a link and see basically where it's at. At that point in time, once we're notified of there's an incident somewhere, fire crews are going out in that area, we're gonna get on our radio and listen in to the responders that are going to that incident to get what that scene size up is. How big, how bad is it? What's the projected outcome of this? Is this something that needs to have more resources to it? Is it going to be a long incident that's going to be extended attack? Are there structures threatened? What's the burn rate? All those different kinds of things we can get off the radio. And later down the road, when we need to get some more clarity, we'll call our different partner agencies like a CAL FIRE duty chief to get what their size up is, what do they know about this incident, and it provides us with the situational awareness that we need to make recommendations to our director, the Director of Emergency Services. At that point, we can recommend to activate the Emergency Operations Center here. There's 3 different levels of activation based on the size, severity, or the outlook of an incident. Level 3 is our lowest. It's maybe a dozen folks. And then level 2 is that middle ground, more of a transition really to level 1, where you have about 100 and 120 different people in this room from all the different various agencies and stakeholders for an incident. Disasters are a trauma. And like a trauma, a physical trauma, they leave scars. They don't heal the same way, the exact same way they were before. You always see the scar, you always see some kind of impact from that disaster. What we want to do in this recovery process is come back not to the normal of what it was, we want to come to a new normal. And when we're rebuilding communities or rebuilding infrastructure, we want to utilize any kind of mitigation measures that we possibly can to rebuild communities more resilient to future disasters. So in that way, we use those lessons that we've learned, and we can make our communities more robust and better off for anything else that comes down the road in the future.